Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most beloved, one of the most hyped self-published fantasy books on booktube, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. I believe this book won Mark Lawrence's self-published fantasy blog off of 2019. I can't believe that competition has been running for so many years at this point. I remember when the idea was first pitched, and I remember the big blogs at the time, they kind of jumped in on it, and it was this really cool idea. It's kind of cool to see the kind of books they've managed to highlight and bring to the forefront at this with this competition. And The Sword of Kaigen is definitely one of those books that I don't think I would have even known about it if it wasn't for that competition. So kudos to them. But yeah, this book, like I said, it's a booktube darling. I don't think I need to introduce it in this video. What I will say is that I get the hype. This book is wild. So quick nutshell for maybe the one person who hasn't read this book yet that will see this video. We have a very Japanese inspired tale where we have this clan, the Matsuda clan, that is one of the families that exists on the border of this land, the Kaigen Empire. So, where they're basically like this, similar to like the Edo period Japan. They're like essentially this feudal martial family, and they stand as basically a rural military force, independent rural military force who defend the border against the Ranganese, who are invaders, who come from they come from stock from people from the lower end of the totem pole in terms of this society stratification of people. They're basically the children of peasants, and throughout this entire book, one of the recurring themes is just the Matsuda clans and their retainers, their sense of superiority, because there's quote unquote the samurai class, whereas these people are the peasant class, and it's obviously it's a bias that they pay very dearly for, even ultimately, but that's a different story. So that's kind of what we have. We have this clan that's there, and naturally they get put to the test because naturally the Ranganese invade, and yeah, that's pretty much the story. That's pretty much the backbone of the plot. But this story is so much more than that. Like let me start with the characters. So, or furthermore, let me start with the plot of this book because it's kind of important to discuss that part of it. Like this book is very glaringly a three-act plot. So in the first act, we are introduced to the characters. Emil Wang takes her time, just kind of unfolding and unpacking this world. We learn quite a bit about how this world is set up, some of the societal issues that pervade this setup, and we see that in the form of this child who comes to this village with his father when they come to set up a telecommunications tower, and they find this village that seems to be basically an anachronism, something stuck into a past long forgotten, whilst the world has moved far ahead. It's an interesting culture clash, and it forms one of the core tenets that runs throughout the book. The and that kind of allows me to segue into the first main character of this book, who is Matsuda Mamoru, who is this child's classmate, and he is the heir to the Matsuda clan. And in typical, like if you've read anime, you'll probably be very familiar with his particular kind of storyline. He's the heir to the clan. He has these strong sense of duty, responsibility. He has to master these techniques and become like a worthy heir to the clan and a worthy successor. And he can't shame his ancestors. That kind of thing. All very Bushido driven kind of values. And when he's confronted with this with this conflict to his worldview, he starts to realize just how much propaganda he's been surrounded by, and it kind of forces him to really dwell on things, and he makes an interesting choice. He makes a choice. I won't spoil it because for me that choice was like the most fascinating part of this, but it boils down to what you can control and what you can't, and how you choose to deal with it. And he makes his choice based on that, and I love that. That was the first. I think that was the thing I love most about his storyline. And then you have the other main character, who is his mother, Misaki. So she, unlike the rest of the Matsuda clan, she married into the clan. In her youth, she was able to travel, so she actually went among the Ranganese while studying abroad, and she got to learn about them, and she was actually a very good swordswoman in her time, in a society that was far less sexist, far less patriarchal than the Matsuda clan's society is. So she had that opportunity, and she proved to be a very good swordswoman. And eventually she chooses to become a mother, and she puts on her sword, and that's how she marries into the Matsuda clan. She has Mamoru and his brother, and that kind of simmers in the background. And her story throughout the entire first act of this book is all about her kind of looking at this looming threat with her husband and trying to warn them of what's coming, trying to warn them based on her experiences in her life, and having to deal with just this sexism and all of that. And of course they don't pay attention, and of course they pay the price for that. But read and find out about that, the particular details of that. So that's kind of the first act. The second arc is the invasion arc, where it's everything we love about epic fantasy. Like, it's just this big wild battle. The magic is on full display here. The skills, like, if you like samurai movies, if you like samurai stories, it's just one big awesome battle sequence. The magic in this story is wild. It's very elemental, and it comes into play in this story. And in this particular arc, things happen. Things happen, needless to say. Like, it's just wild. And then we come to the most interesting, for me, what was the most interesting arc of this book, which is a fair chunk of the book that gets dedicated to this third act, which essentially focuses on the consequences of the invasion. For me, this was a very interesting choice, a very creative choice, and one I thoroughly enjoyed, because it's not often that we see this much time, this much focus spent on dealing with the consequences of what would be the quote-unquote grand finale, the culmination of an epic fantasy book, especially of a book like more on the military side as this one is. Like, usually, yes, there is some like focus on the consequences and the after effects and the results of these things, but they tend to be like very small, very sparse. They might be like just a few, maybe 2 or 3 wrap-up chapters at the end of a book, that kind of thing. This is the first time where a significant chunk of a book, like, and I can recall reading where a significant chunk of a book was dedicated, like, essentially the book peaks in the middle with this big battle scene, and then a significant chunk of the book gets spent dealing with the consequences and the repercussions of that. And for me, it was a very, very brave choice. I can kind of see why people say, oh, it has plotting issues, it has pacing issues, because of this particular choice. Like, that's where the core of it is. But for me, it's easily the most interesting part of the book, because that's when things get really rough, really intense. And the events that happen, it breaks pretty much every character. It forces them to face to confront their personalities, who they've become, the choices they've made, and to force them to change, especially when events start to unfold that just kind of reinforce everything we learned in the first act. So yeah, like just epically done. Even if you think you know this story, you have to read the story to fully appreciate everything. Like maybe I made a mistake and gave some spoilers here. I don't think I did, because this is one of those stories you could know the entire plot from start to finish, and there's still so much to enjoy in it, and it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter if you think you know the story. I know it does not work. No, like this is a book you have to read to enjoy. Like really wonderfully done. I get the hype. I enjoyed myself tremendously. I'm already excited to reread it at some point. And it really is one of the best standalone fantasy novels out there. Like I in the past, like I've been very wary of like influencer recommended fantasy books, but this is now the second booktube darling I've taken on that's really lived up to the hype. The first trilogy being the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington. And yeah, what more can I say but believe the hype. This book it's amazing, it's worth the read. Highly recommended. If you're a fan of epic fantasy in any way, shape or form, this is not one to miss. And like I said, it's a standalone. It takes place within one of ML Wang's worlds, but that doesn't matter. I knew nothing about those books. I don't care to read those books. I just thoroughly enjoyed this one from start to finish, and maybe if we're lucky we'll get something along those lines again from her in the future. But yeah, if you've been considering reading this book, can't recommend it enough. There's something in here I think for everyone, like just cool action sequences, some deeply driven, character driven moments, and just an intense battle. Like this might be one of those rare books that has it all, and it has quite a bit of social commentary in it, especially within that first arc. Yeah, good stuff. Everything I like about fantasy. And yeah, that's it. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.